this is the front page lead in the Herald this morning. Revelations that the woman complainant at the centre of the McSkimming scandal is still facing charges from police. This despite a 24-hour apology tour by Commissioner Richard Chambers. The whole story would not have come to light if it wasn't for a long fight against court-ordered suppressions. Right now we're going to Herald investigative journalist Jared Savage, who was one of the reporters who fought to make this case public and has the details of this morning's story. Jared, good morning.
Morning, Ryan.
So what's the story? Why is this woman still facing charges? What charges is she facing?
So just to quickly recap, she sent these emails alleging allegations against McSkimming. She was, he painted that as a campaign of harassment. She was charged. That was sort of middle of last year. As the case progressed, still suppressed, we couldn't report anything. Other things came out. So, for example, that McSkimming had objectionable material on his computer and he was charged. Now, once suppression's lifted on him, shortly after that, the woman at the centre of the case allegedly sent a bunch of abusive emails to the officer who arrested her on the original charges, as well as his wife. So the police have then laid a second set of charges against McSkimming's accuser. Fast forward to September, the Crown withdrew the charge on the McSkimming complaint, but the other ones where she has allegedly sent these emails to the police officer who investigated her is carrying on. And so she's still in front of the courts, despite this police apology earlier this week for how the McSkimming stuff was mishandled.
And have you managed to speak to police about that fact? Because, as you've said, as I said, the apology for the way that she was treated, the behaviour of police, what, in the Commissioner's own words, he described as a cover-up. How can you still have these other charges going on?
Yeah, well, we've gone to the police for an explanation around that yesterday. We've yet to hear back. They said that we're getting sort of legal advice around that. What I suspect that they will say is that this is out of our hands. Our hands are tied. The case has been referred on to an independent barrister, or that is the case. There's an independent barrister running the prosecution now, and perhaps some sort of oversight from the Crown Law Office. So we've asked those questions. We're waiting to hear back, but I suspect that'll be their explanation for it.
Okay. And what about the Herald challenging this non-publication order? What was the order about? Why has it taken so long to get here?
So when this young woman was originally charged with over these emails back in the middle of last year, everything was suppressed completely because of at that point in time, McSkimming was deemed to be a victim or a complainant in the eyes of the court. So if we had been able to publish all these allegations against him at that point, the argument would be, well, that's going to destroy his reputation and his career. So, and at that point, he was about to put his hand up for the Commissioner's job. So it was entirely suppressed. We didn't know anything about it at all. December last year, myself and a few other reporters started hearing whispers that McSkimming was, under investigation for these women's allegations. We started asking questions, and then that's how we discovered that she had been charged and was, a defendant as well as a complainant in separate police investigations.
What's your take, Jared, on Costa? Because I always thought it was weird that he went from police commissioner, National sort of didn't like him when he was commissioner, and that was no secret. And then they get him into the social investment role that was announced in September last year. He didn't take office until the 11th of November last year. What's your take on why that happened, do you think?
I'm only sort of speculating here, so I've got to be careful, but it's obvious that the national government didn't want Costa to be their police commissioner. They wanted somebody else, and Richard Chambers fitted the national bill on that. So I think Costa's been pushed sideways potentially. They've kind of created an opportunity for him. He's a man of many talents as well. He's good at that kind of that social investment, big picture strategy stuff. So they've created an opportunity for him. He's moved sideways. It's been a bit of a sweetheart deal, if I could put it like that. And that's allowed the government to get on with what they want to do in the police. So that's how I see that arrangement.
And now we've got Sir Brian Roche on the program in 20 minutes or so. But it looks to me like they're gonna have to get rid of him. They're gonna have to give him the flick, and whether he goes and there's some kind of handshake or parachute or whatever, that doesn't look like it's something that's sustainable.
I think the public pressure, and during the report, Andy Costa puts forward his, what he was thinking at the time, and some of that might be understandable. I think he's accepted the narrative from his colleague McSkimming, and that's sort of potentially blinded him. He's seen McSkimming as a victim, not a perpetrator, and so I think that's coloured everything. I think it'll be very hard for him to stay on in his job. It's pretty clear from that press conference the other day that the government no longer has any confidence in him.
Yeah. We'll leave it there, Jared. Thank you very much for that update. Jared Savage, Senior Investigative Reporter with the Herald.